Okay, who do I have on the telephone lines?
John McAllister.
Trustee McAllister's one.
Marshall Wilson.
Marshall, thank you.
Lisa Swan.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll go with that to begin with. Okay, well, we'll see if the rest of them get on it. Okay, I would like to call to order a regular meeting of March the 7th, 2018. And it's going to, I need everyone in the back to sing loud and clear for the singing of O Canada. I'll ask you to do roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 07 March 2018. Trustee Armour. First Vice Chair Cartner. Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs. Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson.
Present.
Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald. Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards.
Present.
Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Marshall Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have quorum.
Thank you very much. I have a consent item. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda item 3.02 to 3.03, March the 7th, 2018, as submitted. Moved by Trustee Richards, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. I'm going to ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm in favor. I'm just having some difficulty here.
Thank you.
Is it normal?
Oh, you good now?
Not yet. They're coming on.
And Trustee McAllister, I assume you're in favor? Thank you. Do I have any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, we're going to move forward with our first delegation. Before I do that, tonight we have a lot of people that are not at the table, but they are on the telephone lines. It's and as I was saying to some of you, it's live, so there's 1.5 million people watching it tonight. So enjoy. And so I'm going to turn it over. Our first school is Caldwell Street Public School, and I'm going to ask our superintendent, Jody Barrett, if she'll introduce the principal and vice principal.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to welcome this evening from Caldwell Street Public School, Principal Paul Leroy and Vice Principal Claire Snyder. Caldwell Street Public School is found within the town of Carleton Place and on the lovely Caldwell Street, so named. Both Paul and Claire are new administrators to Caldwell Street and are eager to share their journey within the school over the course of this year and a little bit of the work that they're doing and in the work they're doing within the school. So welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks very much for the introduction. We are, my name is Paul Leroy, and
I'm Claire Snyder.
And we are the very proud administration team of Caldwell Street Public School. We are pleased to be here this evening to share with you the story of our school. Caldwell Street Public School was erected in 1966 and has a current enrollment of 396 students from kindergarten to grade 6. Caldwell was reestablished as a dual-track school this year and currently offers French immersion programming from kindergarten to grade 6 and English-only programming from kindergarten to grade 2. Approximately 12% of students receive regular French instruction and 88% are enrolled in French immersion. There are 18 homerooms at Caldwell, and all in, we have over 36 committed staff members. Caldwell Street Public School has a large footprint, the result of expansions and renovations. This provides great space for students and staff to spread out, but can be a large distance for little feet to walk. We continue to assess projects to make the school better while balancing it out against possible school reconstruction in the future. Caldwell Street Public School promotes programs and enterprises that develop the whole child. School partnerships and school initiatives strive to support the social, emotional, physical, and intellectual growth of our students. CSPS is committed to creating a collaborative and inclusive community that recognizes the contributions of all of our students.
A favorite program continuing this year is BOX. BOX, Build Our Kids' Success, is a program dedicated to providing students with an active start to the day. Students participate in physical activity and engage in positive socialization first thing in the morning to prime their brains for learning. Students have the opportunity to take part in 2 6 to 8 week sessions, once in the fall and again in the spring. The BOX program is well supported by parent and community volunteers and has approximately 60 students who regularly attend the sessions.
Caldwell Street Public School has demonstrated consistently strong EQAO results. In reading and writing, both primary and junior data indicate a relatively high percentage of achievement for level 3 and 4. In mathematics, results indicate a more consistent representation of students across the achievement levels. Worth mentioning are the results you see for primary and junior reading for the 2013-2014 school year. 91% of primary students and 94% of junior students achieved a level 3 or 4. In the same year, primary students achieved a level 3. In the same year, 95% of primary students achieved level 3 or 4 in writing as well. You will find purple codes on this graphic in junior reading and writing for the 2015 and 16-17 school years also. Cohort data demonstrates consistent improvement in reading scores. Writing and mathematics scores are relatively strong. As we drill down into cohort data, we see that in reading, concerning the grade 3 2013-14 to grade 6 2016-17 cohort, an increase of 9% in reading results. Concerning the grade 3 2012-2013 to grade 6 2015-16 cohort, an increase of 21% in reading results. And concerning the grade 3 2010-11 to grade 6 2013-14 cohort, an increase of 11% in reading results. Through commitment to our school improvement plan, we continue to pay attention to adjusting the trajectory for mathematics in both primary and junior divisions, and we are monitoring cohort dips in writing and mathematics as we strive to maintain strong reading results. We don't necessarily get to take all the credit for all the lovely work that you see there, being new to the school. To chart a course for school improvement planning, we examine the data for opportunities to move students from a level 2 to a level 3. Using data from the 2016-17 EQAO assessment, we found that primary and junior students could use greater support in the area of understanding implicitly stated information and ideas in reading responses. The mathematics data indicated that students needed guidance with employing the math skill application to number challenges. This is the use of knowledge and skills to make connections within and between various contexts. We identified addition and subtraction strategies as the vehicle to explore this skill. So In math, we are concentrating on developing instruction to teach students how to make connections within and between various contexts. And in literacy, we want to provide learning events that support students' understanding of implicitly stated information and ideas. Our theory of action for both literacy and mathematics school improvement plans grew out of what we identified as a consistent thread in both endeavors: how to use specific teacher moves and purposely develop questions or tasks to encourage productive struggle. So for literacy, we want to explore the impact of developing and facilitating purposely crafted questions and learning events that encourage productive struggle on student engagement and student learning. Our working theory of problematization is how teachers structure lessons by posing questions instead of explaining content, leading students to respond actively and direct their own reasoning to obtain appropriate answers and ask their own questions. In short, we want students to grapple with ideas and concepts and believe that in this struggle, there is opportunity for rigorous learning. By engaging in this work, students will be better equipped to understand implicitly stated information and ideas in reading responses. Results of our actions suggest that when staff employ problematization strategies, students are more engaged in learning and are more invested in applying implicitly acquired information. Using the addition strategies outlined in Sherry Parrish's book on number talks, we have been exploring efficient ways to tackle addition problems using purposefully engineered activities. Intentional teacher moves revolve around selecting purposeful equations to ensure productive struggle in a scaffolded way. We have been using number talks and number strings to examine transferable skills in addition strategies. By selecting purposeful equations and working to nimbly make thinking explicit, teachers identify useful thinking patterns in solving equations. The results suggest that the more students are presented with scaffolded problem-solving events, the more they see meaning in the patterns that assist with addition. Strategies like doubling, making fives, or counting on. This promotes mental math efficiency. So by paying attention to productive struggle in both mathematics and literacy, we are challenging our students to think critically, question, and reflect. Skills needed by the 21st century learner. By using specific teacher moves and purposely developed questions or tasks to encourage productive struggle, we are working to address the student needs uncovered in our data.
Caldwell Street Public School promotes the social, emotional, physical, and cognitive well-being of our students in many ways. Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Lanark County runs an after-school program for students at our school. The program offers students an active and positive place to socialize and to come together. Students with autism and their parents and families are participating in a program called Kids Gotta Move. The Kids Gotta Move program is a free program for families designed to foster growth and self-regulation for young students with autism. Caldwell Street Public School runs a downhill ski club on Wednesday evenings in January and February. Many participants are first-time skiers who would not normally have the opportunity to ski on a regular basis. CSPS students are supported with flexible scheduling and individual supports. It has been a priority for Caldwell Street Public School and the CSPS School Council to begin to establish a sensory room for students who need a body break and the space to satisfy sensory needs like deep pressure. Our sensory room is taking shape and is currently used between 8 to 15 students on a regular basis.
Caldwell Street Public School is very pleased to be part of a new initiative called Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support. It is a pilot project with the UCDSB Teaching and Learning Student Support Department. PBIS is a proactive, multi-tiered framework that schools use to identify needs, develop strategies, and evaluate practices to build positive school culture. PBIS also lends itself to the implementation of a trauma-sensitive or trauma-informed approach to education. Trauma-sensitive practice is about creating a school environment where every student feels safe and supported and where staff understand how trauma affects behavior and emotions. By embarking on these strategies, we hope to better serve pupils by valuing the experience of our students, approaching all situations from a place of non-judgment, and by teaching and celebrating positive interactions and expectations. As some of the newest members of this great school community, Claire and I have identified what we think is the essence of Caldwell Street Public School. History, community, and connection are three concepts that describe our experience so far. Caldwell Street Public School is a dynamic place. It has a long history, and as such, many community members have strong connections to the school. There is a real sense of pride that comes with being a Caldwell Street Cub. Many parents of children attending Caldwell tell stories of teachers they had attending CSPS and tales of schoolyard activities, sports, and drama productions. At a recent school council meeting, Claire and I asked members if they could identify the spirit of Caldwell Street School, and they shared the statements you see here. History, community, and connection are a reflection of CSPS, but also act as the driver behind the sense of purpose that carries on at our school. These concepts are the momentum that helps create the positive atmosphere and togetherness of our school community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I open it up to all the trustees, I'm going to turn it over to, you're fortunate enough to have this trustee, Trustee Cram. I'm going to open it up with you.
Thank you, Chair. Paul's a little modest in his introduction as well, because yes, he's a first-year principal at Caldwell, and Claire is first-year vice principal at Caldwell. But Elmont lost last year when both of these fine people were at Artate and switched over to Caldwell, and it's Caldwell's benefit. That's not to say that Artate and Elmont isn't doing as well either, because some of the Caldwell staff also ended up at Artate. You can see by the stuff in the EQAO that both sets of principals and vice principals have done an exceptional job with their students. And one thing, Paul, that I'd like to ask you to do is elaborate a little bit more on the school council, because I know when I go to the school council meetings, there's always 20, 25 people there from all walks of life, and the kinds of things that they do in the school. Can you give us an indication of what they do for your school?
Sure. Through you, Chair. So, yes, a very vibrant school council we have at Caldwell Street Public School. As Trustee Cram had mentioned, it's well attended, and the folks around the table are very committed to what is happening at the school. So again, these are often some of the things that we've inherited in terms of tradition, but I know that we're looking forward to a water day that's coming up in the spring, and there's lots of commitment to not only fundraising but wanting, because often that tends to be something that the school council takes on, but there's also a real interest in what's happening in the school. So it's not there's a huge commitment, but there's also wanting to know what is happening on a day-to-day basis and how they can be a part of making that a better place for their kids.
Thank you.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about the sensory room? I'd be interested to hear about that.
Sure. Through you, Chair. So the sensory room was a commitment that took off last year with the school council, and we have, as I mentioned, have some space in the school. So one room was designated as a space for that, and we were able to utilize some of the equipment we have had purchased through SIA in order to create a room that handles a number of different sensory needs. So one of the things that school council really did a great job with is we wanted to have some supporting mats for underneath. So they purchased the supporting mats. Actually, it was sort of a mostly school council, but also a school venture. And there's a swing that is there that we have set up, and it's a space for kids to be able to go and break out, but also a space for them to work on specific needs that come up.
Can the students choose to go there themselves, or is it the staff directs them to go?
Through you, Chair. We generally have staff that go with them. There are, as I mentioned, 8 to 15 students that kind of access it, but it's certainly not excluded, right? If kids need to have that space, we want to be able to provide that. So
We know that sensory rooms are really good for children that have stressors and anxiety and the pressure blankets and lizards and all that kind of neat stuff that you can have in those rooms, and,
Yeah.
and it really calms them down.
absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone on the telephone lines that would like to ask a question or make a comment? Okay, so last year, the director and I were out at Caldwell School for the 150th celebration. The Lieutenant Governor General was there. And the thing that struck me the most, I mean, there was many things in that school that it's a busy school. There's lots going on, and you've touched on a lot of them in terms of the staff and the community. Your office staff is amazing. I mean, the tone is set as soon as you enter that school with your office staff, and they just made, I can't speak for the director, but they made me feel amazingly welcome, and I'm sure that they're continuing to do that. So there's a lot of great things. Can you, and normally I don't ask questions, but I'm going to ask a question. Can you tell us a little bit more about the trauma-centered approach? Because I've never really heard that before, and it sounds interesting.
Sure, through you, Chair. So when the idea of PBIS, or the Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, was something that I had discussions with colleagues with in the past. And so when you're looking at the information about it, it started to lend itself to this type of this sort of type of theory. So the idea that we are able to come at looking at a problem, considering all of what a student might have experienced, and to make sure that we've checked our thoughts and opinions, and to make sure that we're coming at this with a completely open mind, is really important. Excuse me. Not just in order to demonstrate that we are, coming at this to try and come to a solution, and to try and really understand what the problem is. So there are lots of kids and students that come to us with lots of varying experiences. So we want to be ready to understand what those are, and if we can't understand and appreciate just due to not having gone through that, we need to be open in order to come at it with an open mind. I hope that.
It does. Thank you very much. And the director just reminded me that at that 150th celebration that I played the piano along with, I think it was a grade 1 or grade 2 class, and the teacher was playing the guitar. So the invitation, if they want me back to jam with them, I'm available.
We'll gladly take it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing the run, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, I thought you were touching your hair.
No,
my apologies.
I just wanted to point out that despite our primary and juniors doing really well in your in mathematics, there still is a drop of 30% from of percentage points regarding the math, from where they were in primary to the following 3 years later in junior, which is consistent with what's going on. But they were so strong in primary. And I know you've just started there. However, I'm reluctant to think that your strategies here for your learning cycle plan and act would be efficient to keep it going. So I guess my question is, how effective do you feel we're going to be with this strategy that you're putting in there now? I mean, is this your strategy, or is this a strategy that you already had in place when you started?
No, through you, Chair. This is our strategy, yes, that we had set up.
you set up?
Right, yes.
Okay, all right, so we'll see from in time how it goes.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I have a question from Mexico. From Trustee Kirkner. And it says, could Paul or one of the superintendents explain what the BOX program is? That was on one of the slides.
Okay. Good. Through you, Chair. The BOX program is a program developed by Reebok. It stands for Build Our Kids Success, and it focuses on fundamental movement skills. So it's a program, it's a scripted program that teachers, or we have community volunteers coming in leading it, and it runs the kids through about 50 minutes of physical activity. There's a game at the beginning. We work through various skills. Maybe we're working on just jumping or running, and we're teaching them how to move properly so that they become lifelong active students, people. We also added a component this year. The last 5 minutes, we did a mindfulness component as well through yoga poses and sort of taking the kids. We turned off the lights in the gym and had some quiet music, just to really make that transition from the gym into the class, to bring them, back to calm before we sent them on their way for the day.
Perfect. Yeah. Could you repeat that in Mexican? Listen, I want to thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, our second school is Nation View, and I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Coombs, who's going to introduce Principal Karen Bryan. Superintendent Coombs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everybody. Really a pleasure for me to welcome to the table Karen Bryan, Principal of Nation View Public School. Karen has had the pleasure of being the principal there for the past 3 years. I don't want to take too much of her thunder. I can tell you that Nation View Public School is near the town of South Mountain, about 200 kids. It's now a K-6 French immersion school, and I think what you're going to find is, the school was built in 1971. And if you've ever gone to a school of that vintage, when you walk the hallways, sometimes you can tell it's early 70s, late 60s kind of architecture. But I can tell you the pedagogy inside is not 1970s. It's definitely some really cutting edge things going on. Really excited to hear more from Principal Bryan.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Coombs. Thank you for including Nation View in tonight's meeting. I hope this presentation will give you a glimpse into our wonderful school. It's a place where we find absolutely awesome, hardworking children and great supportive families, and a staff that cares and knows each and every one of our children. As Superintendent Coombs mentioned, we are located in South Mountain along the south shore of the Nation River, and services the rural communities of South Mountain, Inkerman, Mountain, and Hallville. We have approximately 217 JK to grade 6 students. We are a dual track school with approximately 93% of our students in French immersion. Currently, the majority of our grade 6 students move on to North Dundas District High School. However, we do have a handful of children in our old southern border that still move on to Seaway. In looking at our data across time, along with our observations, we've noticed that as readers, writers, and mathematicians, our EQAO data shows that our students consistently improve from primary to junior. We also have noticed that the multi-step problems in mathematics and providing supporting details in writing has been challenging for our children. We've noticed that our grade 6 results are typically above the board and provincial results. Our grade 3 results typically have no consistent trends. Some years were above provincial and board results, some years were below. We've also noticed that our junior results have some ups and downs, with the variances between the ups and downs being small. However, our primary results are consistently up and down, and there's a larger variance there. The inconsistency and the large variance from year to year is what's driving many of our discussions at the school improvement planning table. We are currently in the second learning cycle of our SIPSA plan, and in the area of literacy, our theory of action is if we engage our students in purposeful guided writing in French and English classes using high-yield teaching strategies, then our students will improve their brainstorming skills and their abilities to generate ideas. That's our primary focus. And our junior focus is to help our students improve writing supporting details for their written work. NationView is in its last year of implementing dual track. We have come to realize that our children need support in transferring skills from our French immersion classes to our English classes and vice versa. Our observation and data indicates we need to align our teaching practices across the divisions, and for us, more importantly, across the panels of instruction. In order to help us reach this goal, all of our teachers have been focusing on writing. Additionally, the learning resource teachers have had guided reading groups assigned to them, focusing mainly on our primary children who are working at levels 1 and 2, and this is allowing our neediest writers to have extra support in that area. Budget allocations have been made towards this goal with the purchase of French and English reading and writing resources. Our literacy learning team consists of both English and French teachers, and the next layer of the team reaches down to the grade-like partners. During this planning time, the French and English teachers are planning a lesson that is focusing on a particular skill, and in primary this year we've been looking at brainstorming and generating ideas, and in our junior area it's about supporting details in their writing. An overarching school focus on learning goals and success criteria for the past 2 years has helped us become more consistent with our assessment practices. This we recognize as an important step to address the inconsistency of our EQAO results. We're currently in the second learning cycle of our SIPSA plan, and in the area of mathematics, our theory of action. If teachers have instructional consistency with number talks and targeted math tasks, then students will build their confidence in number fluency and flexibility, and our students will recognize that math exists everywhere and is not learned in isolation. In order to meet this goal and address our students' flexibility with numbers, we have focused this cycle on 3 specific actions. All of our classrooms are engaged in number talks. That includes our French immersion program, who are completing 3 number talks in a week, and our English side of programming is 2 number talks a week. This, of course, is in conjunction with our allotted math blocks on the English side of our programming. There is a school-wide monthly focus on a mathematical process skill. These process skills are often the focus of the math talks. We're also focusing on the reading comprehension skills as it pertains to the abilities of our children to answer and engage in multi-step math problems. This also connects back to our literacy work. In the junior area in mathematics, we're focusing on moving our children's thinking along the skills continuum from additive to multiplicative thinking. Our student samples shows us our children in junior prefer to skip count or use repeated addition, and thereby not being as efficient in solving multi-step, more complex word problems. We recognize that moving students along this continuum is necessary to having them become flexible and efficient math problem solvers. We also recognize that as a staff, we need some staff development in this area. We have been focusing on the process skills in mathematics. The process skills are basically the actions of doing mathematics, so such things as communicating, how do they represent their ideas, their reasoning, how are they connecting their ideas, how are they reflecting on the mathematics. Although staff were weaving these expectations into the work that the children were already completing, we've decided to make them a focus of our math talks and to explicitly collect data in that area. This will allow us to communicate to parents, in our opinion, a greater depth of mathematical thinking, as opposed to being able to highlight skill-based information only. We're working towards having this data be the content of our formal reporting to parents. We wanted to try and figure out how well we're doing, so we went to the source and we did a junior voice survey this year, and we covered a variety of topics with our junior age children, but mainly focusing on how safe and accepted and comfortable they feel at NationView. A few pieces of data I would like to share with you that came back from this survey. 96% of our students identified that if they had a concern, they have a person that they could go to with that concern. 98% felt safe and comfortable at the school. 65% want to see improvements in the junior yard structure, and I'll speak to that in a few minutes. 40% of our grade 4 or 5 students wanted to have more opportunities for leadership roles. This one surprised us a bit, but they were feeling that they were always chosen second after the grade 6s to lead certain events, which I think we were guilty of doing. So we've made some changes in those areas. 95% of our students surveyed indicated that they have not been bothered or bullied in the last 2 months at school. Some action steps we have implemented regarding these findings and also our other observations. Our grade 6 students have the opportunity to connect with our OPP and Cornwall Police Forces. OPP come in each year and walk the children through the KIDS program. Officers are in the classroom with kids to share knowledge they might need in dealing with today's adolescent issues and to discuss the impact of their decisions. Every April, we're invited to the Cornwall Armories to participate in the Race Against Drugs. This is an interactive day in which the children learn about the impact and importance of the decisions they make around substance use. Despite the long bus ride, the children always return with great information and had fun in an interactive way learning about these important issues. Our grade 4 or 5 class have been experimenting with relaxation techniques, particularly after our long recess time, to help our children regulate and to recenter the thinking brain before entering into the learning tasks. Our children and staff have noticed a great deal of difference for this transition time. This year we have a few teachers who are working with the idea of flexible seating and student-centered classroom approach to provide children with a classroom environment that promotes learning in a comfortable, collaborative learning space. This has also promoted the ongoing development of self-regulation skills and empowering students to make choices that are best for their learning style. This model has been very successful in many of our classrooms. We have a partnership with Cornwall Children's Mental Health, which provides support to our children and families on a referral basis. The agency is also a great resource when we're unsure how to support or direct family for assistance to appropriate services. Their ability to problem solve situations with us has been valuable in supporting our children and families around their mental health wellness. A few years ago, we started a program, Catching You Being a Character, sticker recognition, as a way of recognizing and educating children at the importance of displaying character throughout the day. All staff and students are able to catch you being a character and been given a sticker. We felt this was a way to help students identify with the character traits on a constant daily basis in conjunction with our monthly recognition. It has also promoted discussion at home when children arrive home with this recognition. We've introduced the Roots of Empathy program in our kindergarten area with great success this year, and also to reach our primary children, zones of regulation have been introduced, and both of these tie in nicely with the Character Always initiative. We have a few parents that have great connections with our Indigenous community and have been able to guide us in providing some rich opportunities to learn more about our Indigenous youth. Likewise, we have a parent who has started the Rainbow Union Dundas and Grenville family group. We are fortunate to have this parent as an active member of our community and assisting us in supporting our transgender youths. This has allowed us as a staff and community to grow in this area and become more informed and connected to the resources and contacts. Going back to our junior yard structure and the voice that our junior students let us know about, a committee of junior students and school council and staff are meeting currently to brainstorm ideas on how to improve that space. We're also currently rethinking our supervision of that particular yard to have it include our new outdoor education center for junior kids during our longer recess in the spring and fall. In the meantime, we have been putting our outdoor equipment that we typically use for instructional use only out and have it accessible for our junior kids during recess. Cross-country skiing and the Olympics certainly helped out in that area this year. I've chosen a few photos to share to close off this presentation that I think will illustrate the strong community support that we have at NationView. I am happy to have the opportunity to discuss the amazing volunteer program. We have many volunteers that come in to read with our children help with our nutrition program, help with our special needs, work in our sensory room, provide math help, level our readers, cook at our feasts, design bulletin boards, and so much more. For little bragging rights, for the past 2 years, volunteers from NationView have been the recipients of the Dundas Family of Schools Volunteer of the Year Award. The interesting observation I have made while watching our volunteers is how genuinely interested they are in our children. They engage in meaningful conversations with the children prior to even starting to work with them. They really take the time to get to know the special attributes of all of our children. Last but certainly not least is our wonderful children. Our children are kind, generous, hardworking, thoughtful, and extremely respectful. This is the reason why we've had to order so many character stickers. During a recent carnival event, I observed our older children getting our wee ones through the events, escorting them to the bathroom, warming up their hands, serving them hot chocolate, wiping noses, and leading events, and so much more. The children really take their role as role models very serious and set an excellent example for all of our children. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much. Trustee Armour's not here tonight, but he did send a message. It was short and sweet. So before I tell you what he said, I'm going to tell you that I'm sure that he would be very proud of the work that the staff is doing with our young people. I know that he's talked about NationView, and he's really, as I said, very proud of the work that's happening there. What he said online was, tell Karen she's amazing. So, so Trustee Armour, you're not able to communicate, but you obviously can watch the meeting at some point. So I elaborated a little bit on that for you, Trustee Armour. Any comments or questions from trustees that are online or at the table? Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation. It's very nice to see, as a trustee, to see improvements from when they were in primary to when they're in junior. Despite an improvement is nice to see and something we could brag about. The other one of the questions I have is that you mentioned something about bringing the kids once they come in from recess. You have a focus time with them to help them. Is it yoga or what?
Yes, through you, Chair.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 teachers who are currently experimenting with yoga, mindfulness exercises, music, dimming the lights, light covers, etc., in order to try and help our children recenter from that active brain to an active thinking brain.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions on the phone lines? Seeing there are none. Director.
Mr. Chair, through you, I know that Principal Bryan would know that we've met already one of her staff, Ms. Kelly, who was a Director's Award of Merit winner last year. And when I think about the nomination that Ms. Kelly received last year, she was the LRC, I believe, last year in the school. And I see the presentation tonight. There's so many important things that are happening at all of our schools, and I appreciate how both her staff brought forward something that they thought was special about one of their members, and we certainly heard a bit more about the school tonight. And I do think that one of the reasons why the board created the Award of Merit expectation was not only of the IPSO read about how to recognize where that good is, but as we hear in our school presentations, both of them this evening, there's a lot of humility that comes with people leading our schools, and yet when you see the presentation, there's a lot of bragging rights there for both schools. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope that you'll extend our kind wishes to Ms. Kelly as well.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bill McPherson.
Yeah, kind of weighing in late here, but
that's all right.
Superintendent Coombs referred to South Mountain as a town. I think I'd take slight exception to that one. I blinked on Saturday and actually missed it. You talked about your outdoor education center. I know some of the schools in my ward have toyed with outdoor learning centers and things like that. Could you give us a wee bit of an elaboration on it through the chair?
Through you, Chair. So when I arrived at NationView, the Parent Council had just finished raising an enormous amount of money and built a shade structure with some seating at sort of the back of our property. Historically, there used to be another setting back there that they were doing some science projects and some water experiments because the Nation River is right there. So Parent Council wanted to sort of revive that. And currently the shade structure is there, and we take the children back there. The Parent Council also planted different kinds of plants, and so they'll do some plant studies. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get back there this fall because of the high water level from the summer. So we're hoping that sort of recedes a bit this spring. Our children will go back there and do a nature walk. They will do their work back in the Outdoor Ed Center. And we're looking at making some more connections with some of the grade 6 curriculum, even during that unstructured recess time under supervision.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
We also, sorry to add, but we also have some interest in the Lions Club having a partnership with us to expand that space. So that's kind of exciting news coming up.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing there are none, I want to thank you very much, and I want to thank both schools for being here tonight, and safe travels on the way home. And take care. Thank you. Trustees and senior team, just a reminder, if your microphone is aimed at your computer, can you kind of aim it up and over, because what it does is it picks up your typing and as you touch. So trustees, Trustee McPherson, I think yours is aimed there.
I touched it. It barked at me. I didn't like it.
Well, just move it up so it's not right at your screen, and I noticed a few others. There you go. Thanks. Thank you very much.
I respect the barking dog.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, we have a report, our budget information report, and I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Baxter.
Okay, through you, Chair. We've circulated the budget information report, and I'm going to flip by the narrative. I mean, that was there for you to read and get a sense as to what we had in the report. But at the same time, it's taken a lot of my thunder from my presentation. So we'll go to the... I do have Michael Law here with me from our finance department, providing backup to his newbie superintendent of business. They take very good care of me. Okay, so what we have here is the budget presentation timeline. Just put this here so I'm not moving paper and mic. Excuse me. So what we have here is the schedule, and the budget process, one of the main drivers is the Board of Trustees, and we work towards your schedule. And based on feedback from the trustees, we've established that our final presentation, and we'll work backwards here, is going to be June 6, 2018. We hope to bring the final presented, proposed, and reviewed and discussed budget to the trustees in that meeting. Now, the 2 meetings before that in May will bring the budget in our traditional number format to the board, and they'll be for discussion and answer any questions. Well, we'll present, discuss, answer any questions you have on it. I'm anticipating there'll be more questions on the May 9th session, and then we'll follow up on the May 23rd. If things go well, you could actually, Management Council could actually look at perhaps scheduling the final budget earlier, but it's entirely up to you. We're trying to give you enough time to feel that we're not rushing you, we're giving you time. You're going to have all the time you need to review it and take it home and look at it. Okay? And April 25th is typically, I'm going to skip SEAC for a minute, sorry Val. April 25th, we've got the new grants for student needs, usually come the end of March, and we're hoping, well, we're expecting that we'll have time to look at it and talk about the big changes that you're going to see in the grants for student needs. I'm not saying that there are going to be big changes, but I'm just anticipating that there may be, and we'll have time to look at it and put some numbers to our board to what the ministry has in the grants for student needs. and we'll bring that to you and discuss it. It won't be a detailed analysis like you'll get in May, but it'll be a big picture view of what's just happened with the latest grants for student needs. Okay, and then the March 7th one is where we are today, and it's just reviewing the schedule with you and making sure that the trustees are comfortable with it. We're legislated to actually go to the SEAC committee and present the budget to them and discuss it, and you see that in April 3rd and May 1st we actually show 2 meetings with them. And of course their focus is SEAC, but we usually put the big picture out there for them, how the year is going, how it's progressing, what the grants have done to us, and then try and fit SEAC into that mosaic. Okay, so that's basically there. We could say it's draft. We probably should have stamped that draft because we're here to put something together for you. The rest of our audience is the school board itself, and of course the ministry that we work towards. The ministry loves everything on paper, everything, well, on computers nowadays, and everything in great detail, but a little bit more latitude once we get to the trustees and our own board. Any questions? You want me to ask for any questions at this point?
I can ask that, certainly. Trustees online, are there any questions in terms of the timelines? I think it's pretty, I mean, I can just speak for the board. I think it's pretty clear in terms of what we are going to be anticipating. Like you say, if all goes well, we may end up bringing the budget sooner, but we're looking at finishing it off for sure by June the 6th. So I think, thanks for that. Okay, so there's more that you want to continue with?
Through you, Chair. That's a good news, bad news, Chair. If there's good news in the grants for student needs, it might take us longer to put it together. Right. Bad news is there may be very little, and it won't take us any time at all, but we'll go forward. One of the biggest drivers of the budget is the enrollment, and what we're showing here is the enrollment a few years back, and you can see where it was much higher and it's dropped down. And actually the last 3 or 4 years there on the right are projections going out in the future, and you can see we bottom out and we start climbing. And we're seeing some, these are based on November 2017 enrollment figures that the planning department had to present to the ministry. So those are the figures we're using right here and for our initial calculations. Okay. Now in 2017, 2018, I'm going to be showing you, well, you've probably reviewed it already, but the different years in our projections of revenues, going back a number of years and coming up to the proposed or projections. And in those years, we have $1.3 million in 2017-18 year we're in right now for professional development funding, and that's part of the centrally negotiated labor extensions. Now, the reason we point that out is it's there in 2007-18, and the expenses are there, the ability we have to have additional expenses over and above our normal. But in 2018-19, our next budget year, it will not be there, as far as we know right now. So it's hard to say with certainty, but our anticipation is it will not be there. 2017-18, 2018-19, we have system priorities funding for $3.4 million. And again, when we look at our projections past 2018-19, that's the last year we'll have this funding, it won't be there. So we have to anticipate. Now, again, we're assuming that this was temporary funding. We're putting in temporary expenditures. It's difficult after you've had it for 2 years to let it go, but so be it. Introduced in 2017-18 was the $1.4 million rural and northern education funding, and the allocation in 2018-19 is unknown, but we're assuming it's going to continue. And we'll know more when we get the grants for student needs. Okay, revenue projections. So we use the grants for student needs to calculate this from 2017, 2018. So we're using the existing grant structure because that's the latest we have. And the people in finance, such as Michael behind me, they go through and they crunch the numbers and say, okay, based on last year's rules and regulations, these are the numbers we could expect if nothing changed. And he goes through that and does it. And then we update that for the enrollment from November 2017 that we gave the ministry. So we've tried to do some big changes, but here we go, and you see the circled numbers or the box on the bottom there, I think it's in blue, and the revenue, total revenue has gone from, if I read that right, 332 to 330.8, and that's a $1.2 million drop. And don't forget, we mentioned earlier that the professional development number in this year will not be there next year, and that's 1.3 million. So basically, we've gone down the cessation of that temporary funding, which means we've stayed the same. And the revenue has gone down 1.2 or 1.3 million for this funding, and the expenditures would have gone down that amount as well, which means that if we had a surplus number up there, it would be unchanged between the 2 years. So right now, we're saying that revenue is basically going to stay the same, except for these big ticket items that have the revenue and their own related expenditures that start and stop with the revenue. So this is good news, because in the last while, we've had special ed and facilities that have been taking some real reductions, and I'm going to show you those in a minute. The only problem is it's easier for me to see in front of me than to see on the screen. Okay, so special education, you can see on the far left there, 2013-14, it was 45.2 million, and now projected for the revised budget for 2017-18 is 33.4, so quite a drop. Now, the number beside that for the projection is 33.5 versus a 33.4 in this year. So very little change in the revenue from the year we're in to the projection we're going to, right? And again, this is because when they switched from the ISA 1, ISA 2, and went into the new system, they planned a phase-in over a period of years, and we've been taking the hit in revenue over those years. At the same time, special ed demands, we would argue with the ministry, are increasing. But revenue has gone down, as shown here, but it's leveling out now. And the good news is it stopped. Bad news is it went down quite a bit before it did. School operations, you see 2014-15 at the bottom there was 33.5 million, and now over in 2017-18 the revised budget is 32.5. It's been down $1 million over those years, and again, that's a reduction. They phased in a change to the top-up funding, brought in a new method, and amazingly enough, it ended up with a lower funding, which isn't unusual with the ministry. So you see that, and again, so this has leveled out again. So it's another good news story in a sense that we're not looking for further reductions. And that was basically it. It's just, we're trying to give you a snapshot. We focus in on the revenues. We use the grants from last year. We use the enrollment that we have for this year the best we can. And just to give you a sense as to the direction we're going. It's the first snapshot you're going to see. We'll be coming in again probably and talking once we see the grants for student needs. And then, of course, you get the final one when we do the budget. But they are based on estimates. they will change.
We know that this is certainly a very, very early projection, so we appreciate that. So trustees are going to open it up for comments or questions. It's still very early, but Trustee Bill McPherson?
Okay. Through the chair. I realize we don't have any accompanying expenses. As Chair indicates, this is very preliminary. In the past, the trustees have given direction in that we look for monies to be built in as a surplus to meet emerging needs. I believe that's been our practice for the last few years. And I'm just curious as to whether or not we're seeking input from the trustees in that kind of direction tonight through the chair.
Director, I would think that right now it's fairly early in terms of it's just outlining, like we're still a considerable amount of time away, but I certainly would be expecting that the trustees would be consulted on that. But Director?
Mr. Chair, through you, that's correct. Our practice over the last 3 years has been to bring to the board considerations, and through those considerations the board would provide sort of an effort to shape that for staff to come back in subsequent presentations.
Okay, can I have a second?
Certainly can.
Okay, following past practice, as chair of the Spec-Ed committee, it has been the practice to supplement special education. I'm going to say somewhere in the range of $1.3 to $1.5 million annually to offset the cuts that we have endured in the differentiated special needs amounts. As you see, we now have lost 100% of those grants. And so I was just wondering if that would be part of the direction that you would be seeking as well.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, I'm looking at the same slide as the trustee has identified there. We would look to the board for what their advice would be in terms of how we could mitigate some of those changes that have happened and have accumulated over the past. There's a number of different strategies that we would be using and have been using. There's also a multitude of programs that the board supports in addition to special education. So we're always looking for that balance in your direction about what you think would be advisable for the next budget year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Trustee Cram?
Thank you, Chair. Slide 8, which is the revenue projection. You know, it's with the total difference between this year's budget and projected next year's 1.2. And if I look at the figures up above, it's basically in the cost adjustment related to staff salary and benefits. Can you give me a little bit of an explanation of what those cost adjustments would have been in the budget?
Mr. Chair, through you, I'll ask if Superintendent Backstrom can comment. I would want to make sure that before he does a foray into that response, just to make sure that we also have extension agreements that were provided through the provincial discussion negotiation table. And there are some figures from last year and this year that would be different in terms of how we have additional dollars for staff and for salaries for staff. That is not an addition or a revenue in perpetuity. It was just for, I believe, 3 specific years, if not two specific years. But I'll ask Superintendent Backstrom to comment a little bit further if he can.
Through you, Chair. You'll notice on that slide there's a footnote, and it references the professional development funding, and that's what's the change of 1.3 million there going down. I'm taking it that that's a category that we use for funding directly for salaries. It's not necessarily, I'm not sure, does that include the Q&A?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So basically what we're seeing is the funding we get for qualifications and experience, where the ministry funds you in the normal grant at a certain average level, and then they, of course, different people get paid different amounts based on the job they're doing and whatnot. And for the teaching area, they actually go in and do a matrix of years of experience and qualifications. And then we put the number of people in that matrix, and they pay us so much. And what it does is it brings the salaries in the final result closer to actual. So that's what that line is doing for us. We could have rolled it into, well, we do roll it into salaries when we talk the expense type, but here we're talking funding sources, and it is a separate grant.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Just for clarification, and this is probably for the director, if you could just help, the 1.4 in rural and northern education funding, that is earmarked for what exactly? Or is that to our discretion? I remember there was something we were to our discretion, but...
So, Mr. Chair, through you, you may recall in our last meeting when I was presenting the director's report that staff looked at allocating that to a rural guidance counselor for the 15 schools that qualified for that. 64 schools qualified for that funding to be dispersed. And we looked at how could we get the most amount of impact for focusing those dollars into specific kinds of program or supports for students, and that's what we chose to do for this year.
Boots on the ground for...
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Anyone on the telephone lines? Seeing there are none, I thank you so much for that report. Okay, moving on to an action item. I have a motion. It's basically, we're looking at an amendment, which is just changing a date, a reporting date back to us. At one point, dealing with policy 430, safe schools, it was to come back to the board on March the 28th, and we're asking to strike the 28th out and insert April the 11th. Director, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would. Trustees, the request for additional time is because it's come to us that there was some additional agenda items for March 28th that would need to mean rearranging some timelines for that meeting, and one of the items that would need to be arranged with a different timeline is this particular report that you requested come back to the board for another dialogue and further review. So, Mr. Chair, through you, we felt that staff bringing this back to you and asking for the next available board meeting would be at least trying to keep with the spirit of having a timely response and conversation.
Okay, thank you, Director. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the motion out, get some movers and seconders, have a little discussion on it. It's fairly long, so it's moved by Trustee Bill McPherson, seconded by Trustee Tram, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve to amend the motion which was adopted at the board meeting February the 14th, 2018, to refer back Policy 430, Safe Schools, for further review by senior administration and to bring back to the board meeting on March the 28th, 2018, by striking out March the 28th, 2018 and inserting April the 11th, 2018. Any comments or questions on that? Seeing there are none, can I ask you to cast your votes, please? Trustee Cram, you're in favor, I'm sure? Thank you. That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to the Director's remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few things I'd like to highlight for the board and our public this evening. First of all, we had an opportunity to have a rural voice at a meeting that I was able to attend on behalf of the Council of Directors of Education, which was the ministers' stakeholders meeting to discuss Ontario teacher supply and demand concerns. So, as you know, Mr. Chair, any pool of labor has both a demand, a supply, and a flow that's necessary in order for services and programs to be delivered. And in Ontario, there is some challenges, as many trustees have heard. Sometimes it's around qualifications, and what we heard at the meeting that evening as an example is that people who are attending faculties of education to become certified teachers, there are some areas that are not attracting candidates. An example is senior division physics. We learned that in the 14 faculties of education in Ontario, they'll be graduating 79 teachers with a physics qualification. That's roughly one teacher per board. And so that certainly would not meet the demand out there. So there are some questions about what could be done to support that. We also heard, as another example, was that in the intermediate senior qualification in arts dance, 6 people will be graduating with that qualification in Ontario. And so for schools and school boards that are offering an arts program with a specialization in dance for our students, that would also be presented with a challenge. Mr. Chair, as you know, this is no surprise to trustees. There's a number of reports that have been issued provincially in the last 4 or 5 years. People for Education also have waded in at one point to provide some sort of heads up about teacher shortages and teacher qualifications. The Council of Directors of Education asked for 3 representatives, 1 director from an urban board, 1 director from a rural board, and 1 director from a northern or remote board. And I was pleased to be able to come to the table and talk about the Upper Canadian experience, because in speaking to our colleagues who are in surrounding areas who are also quite rural in their disposition, our experience is no different than theirs, just compounded sometimes by the difference in volume. What I'm bringing this to you is for a couple of reasons. One thing is that it's important that the rural voice is part of provincial discussions, and I was very pleased that the ministry held this session and was looking for a variety of input from a variety of different stakeholders, including school boards, parents, federations, faculties of education. So it was a very diverse group, but there's only 40 people in the room. So I think my sense was that they really wanted to get closer to a discussion about how to move this forward. And to me, that's a sign that people are trying to find solutions. Secondly, Mr. Chair, senior staff attended the secondary staffing meeting yesterday in North Grenville. It was a very positive, uplifting discussion, because we're doing some planning, and this is what leaders do, proactively to look at the next school year. Members of the board would be pleased to know that part of the agenda was including things that the board itself heard about: district-wide timetabling, specialist high skills majors, Indigenous education and credits in First Nation, Métis, and Inuit studies, special education. These were all parts of the discussion yesterday, and it was important that we talked about it as leadership work versus management work. I do credit all the members of the senior staff who contributed to that yesterday, and members of our management group from HR, so for Superintendent Hobbs to free up those folks who are always busy to be there for the full day. It was very valuable. And it was also a discussion about integrating what we hear at the board table to making it an operational reality. And last year, Mr. Chair, you'll know that in your mailbox and in trustees' mailboxes will be an invitation for the TRC +3 event, Truth and Reconciliation Commission Day of Reflection. And this is +3, or our 3rd year for doing this in Upper Canada. We've always appreciated the support of board members being present at those events. And as in the past, we have 2 events, one sort of in the west part of the district and one in the east part of the district. It's at Pineview Public School in the west part of the district on May 7th and May 8th. And in the east part of the board at Maxville Public School on the 9th and 10th of May. We have dignitaries that come and attend. We have it focusing exclusively on students and student learning. Our I-Lead group, or our Indigenous Student Leadership Group, has a very important role about promoting and directing the day. We also have our elders and allies from different First Nation communities, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit communities, I should say, who also help to give the day a focus through their own community knowledge and perspective that make sure that we understand deeply the perspectives that those communities want our students to be able to bring as part of a stance on reconciliation. So I do hope that you would save the date in your calendars, trustees and Mr. Chair, and hope that you will come and join us. It's an important date, and your presence, our presence, helps to validate for students and our staff that this is something that we think is important for preparing our students for a successful life. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. And having been a part of that for the last couple of years, there's no question that a trustee's attendance is valued. And so if you can get a chance, certainly drop in. It's not for the. Are you guaranteeing warmer weather this year? It was cold last year. Thank you, Director. Just in my comments, just two things. I want to compliment our communication staff for the way they are broadcasting and promoting what's happening in Cornwall with the OFSA basketball tournament. If I was a parent across the province and I had a child participating in this, it didn't matter where you are in the province, they can tune in to our webcast to see what's going on. It's absolutely amazing. The Twitter updates are great. And I think it's good for the kids, but it's more important for the adults who can't get there, who can tune in to see what their child's doing, whether they're one of ours or not. Even though we did have two of our schools in the consolation finals, and I believe Elmont came out in the consolation round. And but what it did show to me is the power of our communication team, and it also showed anytime you host an OFSA event, that's a big deal in the province. And I think the work that our staff is doing down in Cornwall is certainly showing what Upper Canada is made of. So I congratulate all of them that are involved in that. The second thing, I had kind of the opportunity this afternoon to be at North Dundas, where they're opening up the new TR Leger Centre there. And beautiful room and facility that's been created for those kids. And young adults and older adults as well, because it's not just kids there anymore. And as we all know, that TR Leger is such a valuable program. It'd be nice that if every child that walked in our kindergarten class, X number of years later walked across that stage. We know that so many of our young people run into obstacles and challenges that makes that difficult. And we give them the opportunity to come back. But as I was saying today, the one thing I've noticed, no matter where I go, that has any involvement with TR Leger, is our young people and our not so young people come back for a number of reasons. Basically, it's the staff. They trust this staff that they work with. The staff trusts the kids and the young adults, and I keep saying not so young, but I mean, when you're 89, what do you say? I guess you're not young, but anyways, I will be when I get there myself personally. But it's nice to see the work that the staff is doing, and the trust and the respect that is shown on both sides. So that was a nice experience. Okay, I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole. Moved by Trustee Wendy McPherson, seconded by Trustee Bill McPherson. I ask you to cast your votes on that.
I'm in favor. I just switched meetings, sorry.
That's okay. Just a show of hands here. Thank you very much. Anyone opposed on the telephone lines? I wouldn't think so. Thank you. I also need a motion now. That carries, by the way. I need a motion that the Committee of the Whole move into private session March the 7th. Moved by Trustee Richards, seconded by Trustee Wendy McPherson. Again, a show of hands here. Anyone opposed on the phone lines? Thank you very much. So we are moving into the Committee of the Whole norm.